Greetings. I will try to read from a book verbatim as much as I can. H.G. Hilliard, The Maroon Within Us, Selected Essays on African American Community Socialization. The chapter Socializing Our Children for the Resurrection of African People. Amilcar Cabral has pointed out in The Return to the Source that foreigners can easily dominate a people by material means. Real domination, however, can occur only by the permanent organized repression of the cultural life of the people concerned. In other words, a foreign idea or domination in the real sense can only be guaranteed if there is a physical liquidation of a significant part of the dominated population. Cabral goes on to say that when a dominator takes up arms to destroy people, it must also destroy, neutralize, paralyze its cultural life. For with a strong indigenous cultural life, foreign domination can not be sure of its perpetuation. There is a hole in the ozone, which is a thin layer of gas that surrounds the earth and protects us from the most harmful ultraviolet rays of the sun. This is the first time in human history that we have had this happen, so authorities say that many low pigmented children will not be able to play outside in the sun. In a few years already, skin cancer among whites is at an epidemic level. This happened before any expert realized that it cannot be cured. Moreover, we do not seem to be able to stop doing what we are doing to create the problem. We release these carbons into the atmosphere only with other pollutants. This is done as a part of the process of manufacturing consumption of such things such as refrigerators and aerosol sprays. No one can seem to know how to stop this harmful practice. This is something that the experts did not foresee. In October 1987, the stock market crashed. Its stock prices was larger than any before. Experts did not foresee the crash, and even though it cannot explain it, some say that among many factors, there is a matter of computer trading. Computers were supposed to be making decisions without the benefit of non-programmed human judgment. Just think, experts say the burden of decision-making for the national response to the threat of possible nuclear attack is also on computers. At least one computer expert was involved in the development of the defense technology, said that he believed that we will eventually blow ourselves up. I'm going to proceed on. I'm going to jump over a paragraph. Our attention is drawn to our children when it should be drawn to our people as a whole. Our attention is drawn to our children when it should be drawn to our people as a whole. We must understand the real meaning of self-destructive behavior. Real self-destructive behavior occurs when we identify so strongly with our oppressors and that we do ourselves the worst that could do to us. This is rather than wait for our culture to be destroyed. We commit culture suicide and enter voluntarily culture servitude, uncritically embracing alien culture forms, even destructive and incoherent ones. In the process, we lose the glue or the tie that binds us together as a people. At worst, group solidarity crumbles in the face of love affair with individualism, an individualism that loses its cultural moorings. We had a glorious beginning. Africa is the mother of the whole human family. Africa is also the mother of civilization. For thousands of years, African people were the premier teachers of the earth. A single nation in Africa, Kemet, demonstrated more than 3,000 years of unbroken civilization. Native Americans were responsible for this, a feat unmatched. And Native Africans were responsible for this, a feat unmatched in human histories. For thousands of years, they were envy of the world, attracting the curious traveler and serious student, the religious and political exile in search of sanctuary, the homeless in search of nurturance, and even the prodigal son or daughter who had left in search of greener pastures. Unfortunately, Africa also attracted the greedy, the Assyrians, the Persians in the 6th century BC, the Greeks in the 4th century BC, the Romans in the 1st century BC, the Arabs in the 7th century AD, and more recently numerous European nations have hungered for African wealth, human as well as material and cultural. Africa, home of the arts, the science, religion, and spirituality, nurturing human wonders of the world, only to fall prey in the succession of greedy invaders. Succession. Even now, the great powers of the world are poised and are active in the quest to own Africa and Africans. The European colonization of Africa and enslavement of African people are but the most recent in a long line of body blows to the continent and to African people in the African diaspora. No matter where African people are today, their potential is unfulfilled. Look at the 60 million Africans in Brazil, millions more in the Caribbean, the Fujia, New Guinea, Dravidian India, millions more in the United States of America. Look at the African continent itself. Africans have been under the siege or in a deep sleep. When we look at the remnants of nations and our disorganized, disoriented people in disarray, we must wonder if it's possible for any African people to take their place once more in the world stage as peers on the world stage. Take that place once more on the world stage as peers. Can that enormous creative potential be released once more? It is the sleeping giant doomed to dream of bondage. It goes on to say, I am concerned because we seem to be rebuilding in a caboose of a train that is not headed for our destination. I am concerned when I find that African Americans seem to be trapped in the rhetoric, logic, models, and problem definitions of mainstream America. We are neck deep in paper reports that seek to present problems, definitions, and propose solutions for the social problems that face the nation. The parade of problems is endless as they flow from the fickle minds of the public policy analysis. On a given day, the major problems for African Americans may be child abuse, substance abuse, teen pregnancy, black on black crime, school dropout, school suspension, basic skill decisions, the black family crisis, and a host of others. All anyone in the general society has to do is to announce a new problem, and we move like clockwork to demand that we get a piece of the pie in order to be able to present the black version of it. Again, it goes on to say, I am concerned because the problem with these problems is that they are not problems at all, but symptoms of problems. When we confuse symptoms with problems, we will not be able to find a remedy, and will squander scarce resources on meaningless activities. It goes on to say, I call the list of problems symptoms because they are the predictable consequences of sustained, systematic, formal and informal, direct and indirect or overt, covert oppression in its legacy. This is not to deny the seriousness of the symptoms and the debilitating effect they have upon the African American community. However, these symptoms have been with us for hundreds of years now. Psychologists, social workers, anthropologists, and educators have made professional reputations for themselves and have grown wealthy serving our needs by addressing these symptoms. Yet the symptoms persist. In fact, they must persist as long as we fail to come to terms with the true nature of the problem. Our problem is the disintegration of a sense of peoplehood. Pure and simple. We have reached a point in our history that we have been socialized to see ourselves as individuals in the cultural um, and culture nurtures. We socialize our children. We socialize our children to be the same way. We culturalize our children to be the same way. To be neutered. Our problem is the disintegration of a sense of peoplehood. Pure and simple, we reach a point in our history that we have been socialized to see ourselves as individuals. Culture neuters. We have socialized our children to be the same way. As we become more and more isolated, alone, culturally undefined, we lose the capacity to see group problems. Gradually, a sense of belonging diminishes for so many of us, so there is hardly an us at all. Without a sense of we, collective action nearly impossible. Without a sense of we, collective action that may be possible will be limited and superficial. We can fight oppression together if we exist, but beyond fighting oppression, we can draw upon the common culture to fashion in a new world if we do indeed belong to the common culture. There's really no escape. Either we belong to a people or we belong to no one. Many of us try to belong to new groups or to the mythical mainstream. Such attempts are accompanied by a profound sacrifice to sacrifice 1,000 years of culture heritage. The aesthetic laws is bad enough, yet there is also a painful psychological, political, economic cost as well. The lack of group unity is a guarantee of group vulnerability. It seems to be very difficult for us to apply this reasoning to ourselves. We readily admire the solidarity of Asians, the Mormons, the Jews, and other groups that have accumulated wealth and power and that provide certain types of leadership to the United States and in the world. Yet we do not seem to appreciate the meaning of their group solidarity, even when it is a loose solidarity. It is because we are so misled about the nature of our problem that we miss the opportunity to pose the paramount issues that we need to address. Let me just take a few moments to suggest some priorities that we should be mobilized to address. I think that we will see immediately that these priorities are significantly different from the list of symptoms that I presented earlier, or that was presented earlier. I think that you will see that it is highly unlikely that we will ever see these priorities on a national agenda for us as long as we wait for others to set the agenda. Reality 1. Reality. It goes on to say, I believe that we and our children need to be informed about the world as it is and not as the various propagandists would have us to believe it is. We need to be able to distinguish friends from foes. We need to be able to distinguish facts from falsehood. We need to be able to distinguish what gives us life from what causes death. For example, many of our children are unable to decode the negative messages about them in the mass media. Many are unable to distinguish between among the famous African American role models, treating fame as if it were our highest value. Many of our children indiscriminately revere celebrities. They see the fame but not the game, as well as athletes as well. The siren sounds of culture death are cloaked in the garments of life and presented to willing, nay, eager and hungry audience. The life of struggle, courage, sacrifice, commitment, and principle is submerged by an avalanche of images of role models that provide cheap thrills. And uses slogans and terms like chilling out. This frequent projected of images and models that is given to the people is the crisis that faces African American people. Yet the real world will not go away. Our frequent responses, that which has been given to us by the role models that is celebrated at the highest level when it comes to treating fame as if it has the highest value. 2, identity. More and more African Americans seem more and more confused about who they are. There is less of a deep sense of belonging to one's people. This is not surprising. There is precious little in the society to teach African American children about themselves. Where can our children go to discover or to be taught about these things? What models can they find to imitate? African American children cannot be expected to know more about these things than their parents and significant others, and the masses of African Americans suffer from amnesia in greater or lesser degrees with respect to our history, cultural forms. We do not do what all successful groups do: make systematic provisions for instructing all of the young in the things that they must know about their own people. We do not do what all successful groups do: make systematic provisions for instructing all of the people, instructing all of the young in things that they must know about their own people. A strong and clear group identity is not possible without the systematic study and practice of one's own history and culture. Purpose. The public schools today merely promise to provide training so that the students can master the basic skills. For some of our children, help is given to master the advanced skills and information, yet nowhere in any of the reform literature on the schools have I seen any reference to helping young people develop a purpose in life. Under optimum community socialization, many community members interact in various ways with each child to help the child reflect upon the highest meaning of schooling and socialization. Going to school to get a job is not enough. Getting a job so that the nation can regain its competitive edge is not enough. I would like for many of our children to come to feel that our welfare as a group and our traditional values should figure into their formulation of a purpose. I would like to think that our children would not be mere prisoners of mass common ideas. I want them to heed the call of destiny. 4, I want our children to be exposed to special information and to have special enriching experiences, information and experiences that expose them to the wider society. I want them to want to go to places to see things. I want them to go to places to see things pertaining to African Americans and to others as well. I want them to see the stock market in operation. I want them to see genetic engineering plant in operation. I want them to see how Hollywood makes movies. I want them to see the vast numbers of Americans, few African Americans among them, who go out into the woods on the weekend and take their survivalist training seriously. I want them to hear experts of all the speeches that are made in the United Nations. I want them to talk to someone from the African National Congress. I want them to talk to an African American actors and actresses about their struggle to get dignified roles. I want them to talk for a long time with lots of retired African Americans about their struggles for dignity in real life. I want them to get to know, well, at least one true African American and one true hero. You see, they don't learn that in school. Five, responsibility. Learning is making about decisions. Acting upon them, the decision must be about real things, things that have consequences. Too many of our children never have to be responsible for things that matter, which, with the possible exception of their own personal survival on the streets. Children who balk at responsibility are of little value to themselves or to others. They can never learn to trust their own powers and abilities if they are never called upon to try. We do not conduct the education of our children in structure that require that they meet real responsibilities. We do not conduct the children. We do not conduct the children. We do not conduct the education. We do not conduct the education of our children in structures that require that they meet real responsibilities. They learn to follow orders, but they miss the experience of having some really depend on them, having someone really depend on them. It is clear that a growing number of us agree with this problem definition and have made serious moves to do something about it. Witness the rapid proliferation of study groups, many of our modeled after some of the most successful ones in the nation. If our children are to get the education and socialization they need, it will take much more than these scattered efforts. We need to have a systematic, structured, sustained program. Such a program must be under the independent control of communities in which they are located. Realistically, this means that we must rely heavily upon volunteer work. There should be activities for our children that are over and beyond their public school programs. Practically, we need a streamlined program that develops the essential skills and provides a carefully designed culture education. It may come as a surprise to some of us that African people have thought about great questions in life for thousands of years, including questions about design of the educational process. Indeed, we have superior models to consider. The oldest human records is found in Africa. They include descriptions of a deeply spiritual, aesthetic, intellectual, and technical educational process. Its greatest manifestation was at the ancient university. Known today as Luxor. In closing, what is the model that we have for today that will give us this systematic educational structure that will sustain the African people in America, that would challenge the values of mainstream, its values. And how do African Americans make this paradigm shift of valuing one another? And there will be no need for low self-esteem if we hold each other in high esteem. In addition, this this chapter goes on to say, it is possible to identify the common principles of African systems of education and socialization that can serve as a guide for the design of our own model system. These basic principles are listed as separation. The beginning stages of education, socialization, are marked by a clear separation of a child from the routine daily life. It is understood that the separation has a deep meaning. 2. Observing nature. The child is placed in an environment designed for a maximum exposure to nature. Nature itself is regarded as a teacher. Peership. Age mates are important peers. The education and socialization process is above all social process. Children are expected to master all requirements together. They begin and end the process together. Rejection of childhood. Children are required to show that they have put away immature things and are ready for the lessons and responsibilities of a more mature life. Listening to the elders. The elders play a major role in education and socialization in the traditional African society. Purification. Ritual baptism for symbolic purification is practiced. Tests of character. Use a special language. Use a special names. Symbolic resurrection, graduation, or completion of rites of passage represents transformation and reincorporation of the child into the full community. There are those who have put this into practice till this present day. May be unknown to the larger society, but yet it is still taking place. It goes on to say, there will be nothing in the use of these principles that would keep our children from mastering modern technology, nor is there anything here that would keep our children from learning about other groups in the world. However, the use of these principles would cast the education of our children in a more human light. It would help our whole community to go beyond minimum requirements of mass education and go beyond the education that is required for employment. There must be more to our lives than that. And the following things in our system of education and socialization. This is what the author says that what he would like to see. Modeling. We are not true role models for our children until we consciously order our lives to serve that function. 2, respect. We must have an environment for our children where they can experience unconditional respect, where we listen to them, where we observe them closely, each and every one. Responsibility. We must provide environments for our children where they learn responsibility by being held responsible for real and important things. Feedback. We must provide an environment for our children where they are well enough known by significant adults so that they can get mature feedback on what they do. Recognition. We must provide an environment for our children where they can receive appropriate recognition for their efforts. Love. We must provide an environment for our children where they experience love as they struggle to become the adults that we want them to be. The salvation for the children that we seek must start with a focus on parenting and on the parenting function that may be served by any adult. The salvation for the children that we seek must start with a focus on parenting and on the parenting function that may be served by any adult. It takes a special preparation for the community to serve in a parental role. Therefore, our target must be the cultural socialization of parents and community in order to enhance our ability to do our job. The only real self-destructive behavior is cultural homicide or cultural suicide. This will set up the essential conditions of vulnerability that will result in the symptoms that we have been seeing as problems. Cutting us up into pieces. Sounds familiar in the ancient world of Kemet. May we mend the broken heart, the broken pieces. May we study the facts and connect the dots. Put the pieces of the puzzle together. We don't want to become victim of the Humpty Dumpty syndrome. As it says, he had a great fall. And all the king horses, king rules, horses, military, strength, power, might. Couldn't put them back together again. But if we study the facts and connect the dots, and we will constantly and consistently put the pieces of the puzzle back together again. And do it on a consistent, committed, daily basis. The maroon from within us. The chapter was called the Socializing of Our Children for the resurrection of African people. Until next time.